At 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everyone? Mike Kadlick here, Taylor Kyle's there for CLNS Media, back with another episode of Patriots Daily, powered by our good friends over at Prize Picks. It is an off day, a travel day for the Patriots, so we're both at home bringing you a 53-man roster projection for the Patriots. Patriots are heading to New York for tomorrow night. They have their final preseason game at 8 p.m. On Amazon, but not a lot of starters set to play, so we figured instead of trying to preview that game, it feels like I would say most roster spots are pretty locked in, and then there's a couple more kind of up for grabs to debate here and there. So instead of
admittedly, I don't know any of the Giants' third stringers. I'm sorry, guys. I let you down. It's preseason.
No, it's that was kind of my fault, but a little behind, inside baseball here. I was like, should we do a Giants preview? And Taylor was like, well, no one's playing, and there's no one, it's nothing happened. I was like, all right, yeah, fair enough. I don't really know why I would need that. So let's get in an early roster projection. Instead, we can use this and what we learn in that game heading into the weekend and into next Tuesday's roster cutdown and go from there. So before we get into each position group individually, there has been some news this morning. Andrew Callahan from the Boston Herald reporting that both Kyle Duggar and Anfernee Jennings are available for trade and that the Patriots have, essentially floated those guys out. And Jeff Howe followed that report up. Jeff Howe of The Athletic saying that while Anfernee Jennings is drawing interest, Kyle Duggar's interest is kind of lacking given his contract situation with the team. So I know we can kind of bat these guys around as we go through their individual projections, but Taylor, your thoughts on, the Patriots essentially saying, hey, we're open for business on these guys, especially, a couple days after both Elliott Wolf and Terrell Williams yesterday saying that they are still fits on this defense, but clearly they're going to, try and open up shop and see if they can get something for them here.
Yeah, I think those were political answers. And you understand, you're not trying to have a repeat of last year where you let one little thing slip and then, it's something everybody can run with. So could they fit in this defense? Yes, but they're not ideal fits. And unfortunately, they're also at positions that are currently very deep. Anfernee Jennings, the fact that he's someone who could net them some trade compensation, that makes sense. He's still an elite run defender. The past 2 seasons, he's really been up there in terms of his production as an edge setter, either the past 3 or past 2. Either way, he's been very productive, and you know what he is. He's not an elite pass rusher, but if you're a defense that prioritizes his run-stopping ability, he still can give you some pass rush if you let him use power to condense the pocket, maybe an inside rip to catch off offensive tackles off guard. That's really where he makes his money. But in this scheme where you can see he's an odd fit when you look at the rest of the edge room, because you're talking about Harold Landry, Kayvon Chason, Keon White, Elijah Ponder, Braden Swinson, even Truman Jones. These are all much more fluid, loose athletes who have a bit more juice to their game. So Anfernee Jennings, and I think I mentioned this when they signed Harold Landry, that it seems like an odd fit because that's an every down player. Right. If the other guy is going to be your elite rusher, where exactly does Anfernee Jennings fit in that equation? Because usually you want to stack up on pass rushers. So he still has value to an NFL team that maximizes his skill set. And Kyle Duggar, I think, does too. But just to once again kind of acknowledge why we are where we are, because I think there's some confusion. Kyle Duggar obviously signs the big extension last year, gets paid like a top 10 safety. And at the time, there were questions about whether it could be maximized because of his use. The whole conversation was, okay, he played deep a lot, maybe not as much as people thought, but the idea was that when he was back there, he tended to have some of his worst moments. So keep him in the box where he can be that run stopper, maybe cover tight ends every once in a while, but really just be a physical, imposing presence near the line of scrimmage. Then he goes into the Gerard Mayo, DeMarcus Covington defense where they're experimenting with some Brian Flores type stuff. It's cover 2, but you don't know where different guys are dropping deep and what exactly is going to happen on each side of the field. It didn't work, obviously. We know Kyle Duggar was on the bad end of some of those. And you can understand, right? It was the early stages of what we now know was not, the most effective defensive scheme. On top of that, the guy suffers an ankle injury in week 4. And somehow plays on it for weeks, which you got to tip your cap to the guy. And it's what makes this so unfortunate because he really toughed it out in a losing season where they didn't really have much hope. But by exacerbating the ankle injury, you have to get surgery. And when you ask anybody, whether it's Scott Booker, Mike Vrabel, Jabril Peppers, Jalen Hawkins, anybody who's been asked about Kyle Duggar acknowledges the ankle injury and how much time it forced him to miss in the spring. And you also hear how important communication is at safety and all those things. the writing's on the wall. Like they're pretty much telling us as politely as they can. It might just be a communication thing where he's behind on the install. And you just look at the tape, which is where we've seen it with our own eyes. He hasn't been the same, but it's hard to watch just one specific player like a Kyle Duggar when there's so many other new and more impactful pieces on your defense. But you saw it in the preseason tape. He doesn't have the same range when he's attacking from depth. When you see him going backwards as a center fielder, like Jalen Hawkins won't always affect the ball on a go ball, and you don't expect him to from center field, but you want those guys in the area. If it's a tip ball, they can catch it. Kyle Duggar wasn't really ever in the area in those situations. Still an impactful run defender. I think he can still be someone who in zone coverage, he'll throw guys off the route. I still wish he could get more depth, but someone can use him, but he's getting paid a lot of money. So the Patriots are going to have to eat some, whether it's the guarantees or I'm not, a big contract guy, but I know that no one's going to trade you, even if it's a 7th round or a conditional late day 3 pick. You're going to have to eat a lot of that money as well. So I think it's better off for these guys to just be in new environments where they can be maximized and aren't going to be bench players, because they should be role players on some kind of defense. But obviously it's just not going to be here because there's so much more talent, both in terms of veterans and young players at both of their positions. Well,
and two, with there's a role for Kyle Duggar that has been said the last couple of days. Like there's a role for a guy like that, even with, I mentioned it the other day, but he's a half step behind in communication. He's a half step behind because of his ankle. That turns into being a full step behind, and you're kind of.
I will say in coverage, I actually did think he was okay. Like I want to give him credit there. When I looked at it, it seemed like in the deep part of the field, he was picking up routes well. He was where he needed to be for the most part. Mentally, I did think from what I saw, and there was a lot more to it, but I did think I want to give him his credit. He was okay there. It was more like his body couldn't really maximize what he was seeing with his eyes. Not to cut you off, but
No, you're fine.
I think that's an important thing to note here.
100%. And so, we'll look at it. We'll talk about it more when we do the safety room in general. Like, is it worth trading him? Is it worth keeping him at that price tag? Do you cut him? There's a lot that these guys have to go through right now. So I think it's important to note the reported from Andrew that they are floating Kyle Duggar and saying, hey, we'll try and trade this guy. It might be a little more nuanced given the contract as how reported. It's not that it's tough to get out of, but it's one of those things where you're going to have to eat some money regardless. It's not going to look good on your end. You made the decision, things have happened, and now they have to kind of deal with it. So, but let's start at the top. We'll go through each position. We'll talk about who we think makes this team and why. And we'll start with quarterback. I think this one's a pretty easy one, Taylor, but I'll throw it over to you. Who do you have in the Patriots quarterback room to start the 2025 season, and who is on the outs?
So to be fair, I thought Ben Wooldridge could maybe make QB2 a competition, because I thought after a couple kind of wild throws in that Commanders game, he really settled in. I loved the poise, the toughness he showed, and he really threw some dots as well. Then you didn't quite see that as much in practice the next week. And then in the game, obviously we saw, he didn't really get any reps. He got reps in practice at times, but especially in the joints, he didn't play. And then I kind of asked him, was it tough not getting any reps? And he said he gets the mental reps and he does what he can, obviously, but you get better at football by playing football. And I did think he was pretty up and down against the Vikings. Still had some positive moments. Like there was one play where there was an unblocked rusher on an inside gap and he just spun out of it, which was pretty nuts to see. I think there's some promise there. He's 25. That's also notable.
Yeah, he's old.
But I still think he's more of a practice squad guy, because Joshua Dobbs has been inconsistent. He had like one really bad first joint practice against the Vikings, but really flipped the page in that second joint practice. And I feel like he started to mellow out. It hasn't been perfect. Like he threw some pretty errant passes. Obviously, the one to Kyle Williams, unfortunately, he had to catch it outside of his frame and then adjust to a closing defender. Not putting that on Joshua Dobbs, but you got to put it on your guy where they don't necessarily have to pluck it from all these different locations. Just put it on their chest at times. But I do think he's played some of his better football in recent practices. And bottom line, he knows his role. He is there to help Drake May, to say, hey, I played this defense. This is what I saw, or how I know this defender very well. I played with him. This is how he doesn't like to be attacked. Give those little helpful nuggets that make Drake May better every week versus, like if we had a Joe Milton in the quarterback room, like what's Joe Milton going to teach Drake May other than how to throw an extra 20 yards? Not much.
To nowhere.
Nothing against Joe Milton. That conversation was insane. But yes, Joshua Dobbs knows his role. I think he's going to be very valuable as a mentor to Drake May. So 2 quarterbacks on the roster. I think Ben Wooldridge does come back on the practice squad if he doesn't want to go for maybe a backup opportunity elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm obviously there as well. I think Wooldridge, I don't see him getting picked up anywhere else. I think it makes the most sense after the full summer. He's here, he's ingrained, and becomes that practice squad guy in case of emergency, what have you. But I think in general, Taylor, and I kind of want to ask you, but I also give my piece. backup quarterback is an issue on this team. I just don't know how much it matters. And the reason I say that is because Drake May is the guy for better or for worse, right? Like that's who you're riding or dying with. And if he goes down for however long, I feel like, not that the season's ruined, right? But that you're living or dying by Drake May. You're not necessarily, there's not really a competition there. There's not, if May goes down, it's okay. There's our developmental guy behind him. Josh Dobbs is there to just be the backup in a pinch. And so if you have to rely on Dobbs to win a couple games, you're kind of in no man's land anyway. But you also would like a quarterback who might be able to string a couple wins through. So I don't know if they're going to necessarily make a change. Like
if you had to put another quarterback in for a month, to be honest, I'd probably rather be Wooldridge. I feel like once he gets
the thing though,
and Dobbs is aggressive. Like he loves those honey hole shots against cover two between the safety and the corner. He'll attack downfield, but sometimes it looks crazy. And he's another guy where maybe he gets better under Josh and protects the ball better in live action, but he also is who he is. And we've only seen him in practice and preseason games. Maybe he's just trying to make the most of those. But from what I've seen from Ben Wooldridge, he just feels more consistent. And as a young guy new to the NFL, just seeing what he can and can't do, I feel like might be more valuable if Drake lost extended time versus Joshua Dobbs when he's a backup who might put you in bad situations.
Right. And that's why it's like, I like the idea of him as a backup, as a mentor, as somebody who is, again, as you mentioned, been throughout the league, can give tips, this, that, the other thing, has been through multiple systems. So knows how to learn a new system. He's worked with Ashton Grant. Like there's so many intangibles of Dobbs that I like, but the on-field play, if they have to turn to him, is a big question mark for me. And I don't know if, look, it's been all summer. So bringing in another quarterback and trying to have him learn the ropes, like maybe that's something you go for if Drake May does have to miss extended period of time. But right now, I guess it doesn't really bother me that much because I know that the plan is Drake May starts, Dobbs is the mentor, and you move forward from there. Once an injury happens, that's kind of where it gets iffy. But right now I'm with you. I think it's these two guys and Ben Wooldridge on the outs who, could potentially come through and be that practice squad guy. So let's move on to running backs. Taylor, what do you have for running back position? Now there's 7 guys right now on the roster with the signing of Michael Bernard yesterday, excuse me. Who do you have in? Who do you have out in the running back room for the Pats?
Yeah, so pretty standard at the top. Ramondre Stevenson, Travion Henderson, and Antonio Gibson. That one's pretty obvious. That's maybe the best three-headed monster in the NFL right now. At least that's what Antonio Gibson and Ramondre Stevenson believe. They were asked about that yesterday. Number 4, I might have had Terrell Jennings if he were still in the running, but he hasn't practiced in a while. Because he's out, they signed JaMycal Hasty, as well as a few other running backs. You've also got Shane Watts and Micah Bernard, who were just recently signed. Shane Watts actually had more pop than I expected. I kind of liked what I saw from him enjoying practices, but he's a smaller guy. I don't think he's actually going to make the roster. Terrell Jennings was playing well. He had a really nice block on Efton Chisholm's first touchdown, some physicality there, and I enjoy the way he plays football. Also, is friends with Pop. So I do wonder if that would affect whether or not he'd want to come back on the practice squad whenever he's healthy. We don't know what his situation is. But JaMycal Hasty, I just appreciate his game. Like he's a dude who's coming in just like he did last year, does a little bit of everything. He gives you some burst and some interesting vision as a runner. He's willing in pass protection, like just does his job, can catch balls out of the backfield. Actually, it's funny. His touchdown last year from Drake May, where it was like a blitz and he was just the outlet. He kind of caught a similar pass from Joshua Dobbs last week, which is very reliable and also can help on special teams. He had a key block on Marcus Jones's big punt return. So he makes a lot of sense as an RB4. He's experienced. You know what you're going to get out of him. He plays a little bit lighter because like when he gets hit, he kind of bounces a little bit more than you typically see from a Josh McDaniels running back, but he's just a solid depth player, and I think a guy who can be a core 4 special teamer like he was last year. This is a special team system that he's familiar with, and I do think that's significant as well. So JaMycal Hasty kind of is easy running back 4 for me. Maybe Terrell Jennings. I like him, but was on the practice squad last year. Maybe he stays there or he gets healthy and goes for a better opportunity.
And I'm there as well with those 4, and I think the signing of Hasty and him immediately getting ingratiated back into the special teams, with Jeremy Springer, like adds so much more value to his roster spot versus even a Lan Larison who was here and looked like to potentially be that RB4 before he goes on IR. But if they didn't go with Hasty and have Hasty even having brought him in, do you think they would have went with 3 backs, or would you have given that last spot to Jennings? I know you kind of said that, but would you Like, do you think shoehorning in that fourth back is more likely, or do you think that they could have just went with 3 if Hasty didn't bring all that value to special teams?
I would have gone with Lynn Larison if he was not injured reserve.
Of course, but yes, I agree. Hypothetically, though, Larison's gone. They don't sign Hasty. Is it a 3 running back room, or do you think they need a fourth?
Yeah, I think you need a fourth because I think they're going to want to cycle through these guys. And Ramondre is still in the red no contact jersey. And I don't think that you can take his health for granted because he has had something come up every year. So I think it's very important because they're going to use these guys. Like if you have packages with 2 running backs in the backfield, you need a third guy. And if there's 1 week where maybe Ramondre just really needs to rest, you'd like to have somebody who understands and has worked in and you're familiar with. So yeah, I always envision there being 4 running backs in this room.
Yeah, especially in this McDaniel system that we've talked about. They want to cycle these guys through. And again, we mentioned Hasty as a special teamer, but with that as the that sort of caveat on offense, he's going to get some carries here and there, and kind of have an impact on offense as well. So, all right, let's go to wide receiver. Wide receiver is the big one. Wide receiver is the exciting one, and I want to preface this room with some reporting out of Pittsburgh from Andrew Filipponi, I believe it is. He works for The Fan, and it's a radio station in Pittsburgh. He mentioned that
some really odd shit.
Yeah, he reported yesterday that Pittsburgh might have some interest in Pat's wide receiver Jalen Polk, who we've kind of assumed would be an IR candidate, or at least just not make the team at all. He's dealt with injury. He's didn't have a good rookie year or whatever. Polk's on the outside looking in, so he mentions that. There was also a report from Diana Rossini that the Vikings, the 49ers, the Jets, and the Steelers from Filipponi are all looking to acquire veteran wide receivers, which my mind immediately goes to Kendrick Bourne. Now, he's dealing with an injury right now as well. So with those in mind, we can talk about the trades in a second, but who do you have in the wide receiver room? And also who in this room could potentially be a trade chip for the Patriots?
Yep. So in the room, I have Demario Douglas, Kayshon Boutte, Stephon Diggs, Matt Collins, Kyle Williams, and Efton Chisholm, all of whom I think are locks. Mm-hmm. I don't want to call Javon Baker a lock, but the fact that he has been the gunner opposite Brendan Schooler and has done a good job at it, it's kind of like that's the Marcellus Dyer role. They don't really have anybody else who can fill that in, I think, or who has the reps to do it. So as a special teamer, I think Javon Baker is almost a lock. Also, just the fact that Mike Vrabel clearly likes him. Like they work hands-on. Javon really likes Mike Vrabel's coaching style. Frankly, we didn't hear Javon Baker talk a whole lot about liking any of his coaching last season. Different circumstances.
The first time I saw Javon Baker smile in a media availability was a few weeks ago when he was asked about Mike Vrabel. So there is clearly something there. I think, again, you're right. There is a relationship there that I like.
Yeah, like there's been a conversation of like, are they going to squeeze 7 on? And like where Efton Chisholm and Javon Baker seemed like, it was a conversation. I really, for the past 2 weeks, haven't thought that. Since Javon showed that he had special teams value, I've been a Chisholm guy from day one.
Right.
I was harsh when he had like a semi kind of shaky week. It wasn't even that bad. It just, he wasn't automatic. And then against the Vikings, I was like, he looks like their best receiver. Yeah. Like this guy's got it with a bullet. And then he goes off and just dominates in the preseason. So Efton Chisholm is an easy one here. And Javon Baker, again, because of his special teams value, like it's not about the number. I don't think this team is like, hope 7. That's a pretty scary number of wide receivers. If you can contribute on special teams, then you are going to make the roster. And these are young guys who can do that. So you have your veterans who it may seem maybe to some kind of crazy they're going to have 4 veterans. I don't know. But Matt Collins has really come on, I think, the last week as well. He's impressed. Yeah. Kayshon Boutte's having the best summer of his career. He just continues to develop and is that sacrificial X. I think he's perfect while they start to work in Kyle Williams because he's not a perfect fit there. I think having a rotation at that spot's pretty good, moving guys around. Stephon Diggs, I really want to see something once the regular season hits for sure. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. We've discussed it. But the fact that he has been quiet at times in team drills, it's not concerning, but it's something that is at least interesting and something of note. And then in terms of out, Kendrick Bourne, we've kind of assumed he wasn't going to be part of the plans for a while. But if they do have, as we discussed with Alex Barth, spots for 2 veterans who can come back on short-term injured reserve, I think Kendrick Bourne makes a lot of sense for one of those because if there is an unfortunate injury to one of the veterans and the younger guys aren't necessarily ready to take on that workload, Kendrick Bourne can slide right in there. I also think you have to consider the fact that you would like him to be a trade chip, if anything. I don't know how they want to deal with it. Sometimes it's just the person you're like, hey, we'll cut you and you can go wherever you want. But at the same time, he's hurt. So who's going to trade for Kendrick Bourne right now? Maybe he comes off in a few weeks, plays well in a game or two, and then ups his value right near the trade deadline, and then you can move him. Just give himself an opportunity to get some good tape out there, because he doesn't really have any. Last season was rough for him, so now he's going on a couple of years where people are like, what exactly is going on with Kendrick Bourne? Jalen Polk, my guess, knowing absolutely nothing, is that he's going to land on injured reserve. Looks like he re-injured the shoulder that he had surgically repaired. Really unfortunate. He's just missed so much time. I don't see how much sense it makes to activate him in the season when he's going to be buried on the depth chart like he already was when he got back. So give him a year to maybe reset, learn this offense, know it inside and out, and, maybe just do what he can behind the scenes to prepare himself for 2026. That's what year it's going to be. Then John Giles, Jeremiah Webb are two guys that have honestly had their moments. I really have been impressed with them at times, but we know what they are. Jeremiah Webb is a really small guy, and he plays a lot of X. So, that it's kind of like a Philip Dorsett situation.
Yeah, right.
It looks a little odd, but he's tough as hell, and I'll give him that. I still remember the first day, I think it was a Pads, where he and Kobe Minor got in each other's faces and were holding each other off and kind of talking shit. I was like, you got a couple of dogs out here. Yeah. So John Giles and Jeremiah Webb, I think, are prime practice squad candidates. Could also see them maybe wanting to be backups or active special teamers somewhere else. I think they can contribute there. And I don't know anything about Phil Lutz. They got another white receiver. That's something. That's very New England. But that's, he's likely going to get cut. He just got here.
Yeah, I'm with you. And here's a comment, too, in the chat. Slater was the 7th wide receiver, which is a good point, right? It's not necessarily positions by room. Some of them is, and Alex actually talked about this again on our show the other day, where there's a certain amount of numbers in each room where like you kind of have to get to that point. The rest of it is he's a wide receiver, but he's also it's like Brendan Schooler in the safety room as well.
Safety, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I'm with you on all 7 of those guys, and I will say that Kendrick Bourne is one of my 2 short-term IR candidates because like you said, I look at him as you either cut him or you ship him back to the 49ers where he was comfortable, because the Niners are looking for wide receiver help. You mentioned if you give it 4 weeks, Bourne gets healthy, has a good game or two. And then, yes, now granted, 4 weeks in, Brandon Ayuk is getting closer, but maybe he has God forbid, has a setback or whatever in his recovery. Then you bring in Bourne, and I just feel like that's the right fit for him. If it's not New England, it's San Francisco. And if that's not going to happen, you cut him and let him, latch on anywhere else. I think he's been a good pro and deserves that.
And even Minnesota as well. It's a similar system to Kevin O'Connell offense. They really need receiver help.
Right.
So, there's a few teams that need veteran receivers. It's just it feels like, unless it would be a Kyle Shanahan where it's like, yeah, we'll rehab you. We'll wait till you get healthy. We already know who you are. That familiarity could work. But if it's not Shanahan, I feel like it would make the most sense to give him some time to put some good tape out there, like I mentioned.
I find it hard to believe you're getting anything of value from a Minnesota or even San Francisco, but more so Minnesota, who doesn't really know this guy and he's currently hurt, right? Like there's nothing out there to kind of judge. You don't know. It would be kind of, there's a lot of hoops to jump through with medicals and stuff like that at that point. So, but yeah, I see Bourne as a short-term IR candidate. And then, those 7, I think Baker is going to make it. I look at him likely not playing tomorrow as a good sign for him. I think they kind of think, okay, he is going to be a part of this team. He doesn't have to show us anymore. So with that's our 7 wide receivers. I think we're all square here. I think we both have the same amount of players on the roster right now. We will get to tight ends and the tackle rooms on the offensive side, as well as the defense. But first, I got to tell you guys about our friends over at Prize Picks, the best place to get in on the action and turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all, and all you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. So run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Again, you can mix and match projections from different sports, so you can combine baseball, women's basketball, men's basketball, and football, hockey, all of them into the same lineup. And Prize Picks also has flex play, which means you can still cash out of your lineup even if it isn't perfect, doubling your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And the app is super easy to use. You got to create a lineup, and all you do is pick more or less on at least a few player stats for your shot up to win up to 2,000 times your money. The Patriots obviously play the Giants tomorrow night. They have preseason action on the Prize Picks app. So check it out. Use code CLNS. You get $50 instantly after you play $5. Again, download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Shout out to Prize Picks. As always, the presenting sponsor of the Patriots Daily Podcast here on CLNS. And with that, we're on to tight ends, Taylor. Another, I think, pretty easy room here. I think it's this is one of the rooms on the Patriots roster that has really just feel like kind of stayed the same and worked itself out throughout the course of the summer. And now it's like, okay, this is clearly our three, and here's the rest. But I'll give you the floor. Who do you have making the Patriots tight end room? Who do you have on the outs?
Yeah, we got our locks in Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper. The only reason I have a third tight end right now, well, I would have had a third anyway, was going to be Brock Lampy. It seemed like he really was a shoo-in for that fullback job. I am pissed. I was so upset when he was placed on IR. I just retweeted it. I didn't. I was like, I don't want to sound unprofessional for a player that like most people might not even know about, but I was pissed. Yeah, now you know. I was really upset that he was one of my guys. He was one of my guys when he got signed as an undrafted rookie. But yeah, Jack Westover has filled in very admirably. I'm like crying a little bit. It's laughter. I'm crying from laughter. I was so upset. But I do think Jack Westover has looked good as the fullback. He's not the typical like Jakob Johnson or James Devlin type or even Brock Lampy type. He's not exactly like those guys, but he's kind of more of a bruiser. Jack Westover is like more of a versatile tight end type. But we've also seen Josh McDaniels. That's usually when he has to fill that fullback role. It's like an Eric Tomlinson. It was Landon Roberts that one year, which was awesome. He like buried some.
Yeah. Didn't he catch a touchdown too?
Yeah, and then they got to do the little dance. But he's been solid, Jack Westover, and he has the right attitude. Like he's not as physically imposing, but when you see his play style, you're like, okay, I could see him lead blocking for sure. And he's smart. Like on that on the touchdown that Travion Henderson had against the Vikings, he had a really nice assist because Hooper kind of got dented, and then he sealed it off, and that gave Henderson some room to work up to the second level. Another guy I want to keep on people's radar is Cole Fotheringham. He is very good on the front side of outside zone. It's just the knack he has for getting the seal so guys can get outside, which is not an easy thing to do. He also looks like their backup fullback. So I'd expect him to be I don't want to compare him to anybody else because I actually really think he's more physical than what they've had at depth tight end in a while, even though he was a late addition. But he played for, I believe, the Raiders with Josh McDaniels. So he's familiar with this offense. I could see him as like a practice squad guy who's a prime elevation candidate if Austin Hooper or Hunter Henry is unfortunately hurt. He had a catch as well. Like he's just perfect in that role of a blocker. He'll catch a check down and, maybe get a sneaky first down. But other than that, I hate that
there hasn't been enough pop. Like it's kind of a bummer that Jaheim, Dupree, or G. Scott. I mean, G. Scott has had his flares, but there hasn't been consistency enough from anybody else.
Yeah, there's like some versatility there for G. Scott. He has soft hands. It's not even like, but the blocking, he looks like a receiver playing tight end where he just gets knocked back at times, and you can see that you just don't really want him at the point of attack, and that's where tight ends usually are. Like this isn't an offense where they're gonna kind of make it easy for the tight end. You're going to have to block next to an offensive tackle and get some movement in the run game. I just think that's going to be tough for him. At the same time, we've seen a Tim Wright in this offense as well. It's not like they just they have one type and they stick to it. But if G. Scott sticks around, which I could see it would be on the practice squad, CJ Dupree was the only undrafted rookie that I really was excited. There's a couple. But Dupree was maybe the biggest one where I thought he could be a real difference-making run-blocking tight end, and I just have not seen the blocking from him. So that's been disappointing. And Jaheim Bell, it stinks because he clearly works hard. Like, he talks to Vrabel. He's been working hard on special teams since last year, but I just never notice him. Unless it's a slide route, which, I'm sorry. I know we love to talk about, we got 15 yards. Oh, we scored a touchdown. It's almost always in the flat.
You can dial that up for anyone.
Exactly. That's the Jonnu Smith special, but I don't think he's effective enough blocker to justify being on the field. So it's unfortunate. Maybe they can work with him on the practice squad as well. But again, I think I just said all these guys can be on the practice squad, but really Fotheringham I think would make the most sense. And maybe you just give Jaheim Bell a chance to work in more of a West Coast style offense where he can get all the slide routes possible. He can, get those sift blocks and just kind of get low on edge defenders where he doesn't have to be this overwhelming tight end presence. So I talked a lot more about the tight ends than I thought I would. But yeah, so Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, Jack Westover is more of a fullback who can also do different things for them in 3 tight end packages. We know Josh McDaniels likes those to sprinkle those in. And Cole Fotheringham really does seem like a prime practice squad candidate.
Alrighty. I'm with you on those 3. And then I think, the practice squad wise, I give Scott Fotheringham kind of the upper hand there just because we've seen them the most. Jaheim Bell, I'm with you. I just see him on the outs. And then Dupree has been disappointing because I originally had him on my roster heading out of the NFL draft. So let's get to tackle, an important position. Headed up, obviously, by Will Campbell and Morgan Moses on the outside. But who else do you have in the room behind those guys as sort of the backups, and who is on the outside looking in at tackle?
So offensive tackle, I currently have Will Campbell, Morgan Moses, Marcus Bryant, who are all locks. I also have them keeping Vidarian low.
Okay.
Now, part of this is that as much as I like Marcus Bryant, he brings a ton of experience, 40 career starts, which you can see in his field vision. Very rarely looks like he's picking things up late. His ability to stay on blocks, even when he doesn't win initially, he always stays in position and fights to make sure that he's getting as much of his man as possible to help out teammates. And when he does get his hands on dudes, it's clearly something they look for in their offensive tackles. He's got it. Will Campbell's got it. When they lock you up, like they just steer you. You are going wherever they want you to go. And also both of those guys, that recovery ability is very evident. And it's something that's impressive because as a rookie, usually the hardest thing is to learn how to recover. And they will be challenged very quickly whenever they end up on the field. But it feels like with Morgan Moses, he's been on a plan. He has missed games the past 2 years. He's probably not going to start every game. That makes Marcus Bryant a very important player. But if for whatever reason he does struggle, because it's not just, okay, can you not get beat by backups? Like, can you hold your own when guys aren't as technically sound or maybe aren't as talented? When they're technically sound and talented, that's a whole different ballgame. So at that point, maybe if Marcus Bryant is struggling in a game, you have the option to bring in a Vidarian Lowe. I still think he's better at left tackle. And also, if God forbid something happens to Will Campbell, you could do a lot worse than Vidarian Lowe on your blind side. And we know they've been trying to see what Vidarian can do as a true swing, even though I've said in the past, he clearly looks more comfortable on the left side. But credit to this coaching staff. I don't think that linemen look drastically different. And I have a nubile eye. I'm not the best offensive line evaluator, but you don't see a drastic dip in play from these guys, or at least from the tackles that I've seen when they do go back and forth. So I just think it makes sense because you got two rookies at tackle. I don't know how you could possibly be comfortable knowing that one of your tackles is probably not going to play every game, not having another guy who's played a lot of NFL starts, especially last year. Like, we can complain about it, but one thing we said about last year, it really stinks that you have backups everywhere, but these backups are getting starting experience, which is invaluable that they would not be getting on other teams most likely. And that's going to come up in the next part of the offensive line we talk about as well. But yeah, it feels like four guys are going to make this team. And then just to quickly hit on the guys I don't have making it, Demontre Jacobs, we love him as a person. He is so nice to talk to, a really good dude. But he still gets beat pretty cleanly, and it happens more than you see with anybody else. Leverage is kind of hard for him as well. So I don't see him making the roster. Maybe a practice squad candidate if they want to keep working with him. He's still a young player. It's still a new system for him. So, maybe there's a learning curve. And Jack Conley is the other undrafted rookie who I was pretty high on and was excited about. They may want to develop him as well. Like, he can play almost every position on the line. There was a reason why we were kind of hyped up. And he's a massive human being. They had him playing left guard next to Will Campbell during rookie minicamp, which could have just been a numbers game. Maybe we looked too much into that. We probably did. He's really only repped at right tackle this summer, so it feels like they want him to be at least comfortable in one position. And just as a third stringer, he's not in the limelight as well. So I wouldn't be surprised. He's got the Doug Marrone connection. Like, we know. It made sense why he could have really been somebody who snuck into the lineup as a workhorse, but that never materialized. That's fine. Work with him on the practice squad and keep kind of working with what he's got. But yeah, those two guys, I could see them returning, but I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't either.
Yeah, the Vidarian Lowe arc is a cool story because, and I know you've been on Lowe for a while, and some people have a love-hate relationship with this guy because he's been forced into starting a lot of games for the Patriots over the last couple of years, and he's been better than people think. And so for him to start the season or start the offseason on PUP, he comes back, plays a couple games, gets back in the swing of things. It's like, good for him. And last year, same with, and we'll talk about Ben Brown coming up next, but him and Brown as guys who have had to be forced into the starting lineup and took their licks, it's only made them better, I think. And so I do see, him as this fourth player outside of Campbell Moses and Marcus Bryant too. And I think it's good for him because it was someone who coming into the season is like, oh, Vidarian Lowe's on our roster again. Here we go. Like, they haven't done anything to change the offensive line, blah, 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 blah. But He's a good swing player, and I think I think he does make the team, and it's good for him to be able to, after the Patriots traded the 6th rounder for him a couple seasons ago from the Vikings, have him come back and make this roster is kind of how I see it as well. Let's get to the interior offensive line. Surprisingly much shakier than the tackle position for the Patriots heading into this year. It's clear that it's Will Campbell on the left and Morgan Moses on the right for the tackles, but the interior offensive line is a little bit more interesting with Garrett Bradbury kind of struggling, left guard being sort of a turnstile in more ways than one. So who do you have on the interior offensive line, and how do you see it shaking out come next Tuesday?
Yeah, the left guard spot's been pretty disappointing. But it also, it wouldn't have made sense to trade for Joe Thuney and pay him $20 million when you're already paying a lot of money to Mike Nwenu. I know we all would love to say that makes a lot of sense. It's protecting Drake May, but you don't do certain things for a reason. Will Freeze is someone they were in on. Maybe he priced himself out. Again, there was only a certain amount of money they wanted to allocate to this position. Mm-hmm. Right, wrong, or indifferent. I've got making the roster Mike Nwenu, Jared Wilson, Garrett Bradbury, Ben Brown, and Caden Wallace. Caden Wallace has been pretty strictly an interior offensive lineman, specifically a left guard throughout this summer. Really does feel like the young guys, the point is to try to get them comfortable somewhere, and the veterans are the ones that have kind of kicked around more. But you also see that's Marcus Bryant as well, because of the role of his job, he's moved around a bit. But again, Caden Wallace learning the interior line for the first time. He's really kind of stuck at that left guard spot. Hasn't been perfect, but I think play style wise, he fits exactly what they want. He even said he liked being kicked inside because it let him be more physical than he can as a tackle, where he's more out on an island. Garrett Bradbury, man, I'll be honest. I don't think he's a lock. I wouldn't be if we're talking surprise cuts, it would be Garrett Bradbury.
And how would you go about it? Who would you start at center?
Well, this is why it's tough, because Ben Brown has worked at left guard and center. If you can pick between Garrett Bradbury and Jared Wilson starting games for you, you're picking Jared Wilson. So if Ben Brown has had a good summer. Mike Vrabel pointed out he got the run game going. He's had key blocks on a lot of their big runs, but he's been boom or bust. Sometimes he misses assignments. Sometimes he'll kind of lunge and end up on the ground. When he's blocking one-on-one, longer, more powerful guys can extend and kind of toss him aside when they need to. So he's better as a zone blocker than a downhill guy, but also working next to Will Campbell makes your job a lot easier. Right. And if you got this is him at center. I'm getting it. But still, Jared Wilson, very powerful guy as well. Mike Nwenu, of course. And Jared, I think, looked a lot better last week. I asked what he felt his biggest improvement was. He said that it was his vision, being able to actually have things slow down for him and see the field, which you could tell. It felt like he was a tick slow in that first Commanders game. Even line games, it felt like he was a little slow to pick up in the joint practice against the Vikings, which is why I thought that he had gotten benched when Ben Brown went in. Right. We now know he was hurt, but it's also fair to mention that he wasn't playing great football, but really I was much more impressed with his performance against the Vikings. Had a quick loss in pass pro where he got his hands knocked down while he was lunging. He fell down on a reach block on outside zone. There was his first pass block. He might have thought it was a run because he went 5 yards downfield on, I think it was a fake draw or something like that. So still things to improve, but he's a rookie. That's going to happen every week. We're going to say that he and Will Campbell had something they needed to fix, but I think you start Jared Wilson, and with Garrett Bradbury, it's still for me, man. If it's the getting walked back, it's some of the lapses, even in run blocking, where he has some amazing run blocking reps. That's where if he's going to make the team, that's why. But I've talked about it. Every center gets walked back, but the way and the frequency with which it happens to Bradbury, it scares me. Because it's either going to lead to late hits. I've talked about where if Drake May throws and then hits his hand on the helmet, that's a legitimate concern. And it's not tackle where it could happen.
And then you got to start Josh Dobbs, which we talked about earlier. That puts you in a bad situation too.
That is not ideal. So I don't think Garrett Bradbury is a lock by any means. It clearly looks like they're considering replacing someone. And when I asked Mike Vrabel about left guard, he unprompted mentioned center. So Garrett Bradbury's spot is not secure, even though he does bring plus value as a run blocker. Now, here's where it gets complicated. I have Cole Strange out.
Okay.
But there you're thinking, okay, then who's your backup snapper, right? Are you going to kick Jared Wilson inside? How does that work? I think you'd have to, because we're all rooting for Cole Strange. When he has his moments, he looks not a first round pick, but you can see where a quality player,
a serviceable offensive lineman in the NFL.
Exactly. But there are also just lapses where you're man, he didn't get beat by Powers badly, but also is that going to happen when he's playing starters? I don't know. And you got to be able to play center, I think, to win this competition or be involved in this competition. And he had a high shotgun snap and a fumbled snap 1 or 2 practices ago. And he has not been a consistent snapper in the summer. I think he's looked okay at right guard. Maybe he has some versatility there. But again, I don't see how, unless he's willing to come back on the practice squad, he makes this team. It feels like they've been trying to give him opportunities and he hasn't always capitalized. And now Ben Brown's ahead of him. Like, that to me signals that Cole Strange is in trouble, because Ben Brown should not be starting games, in my opinion, just because of the inconsistencies. Then I've got City. So one of the just great mysteries of the past 2 seasons is, like, he seems like a good player. As a rookie, he wasn't bad. He could have been better, but you're thinking, okay, there's something to mold here. Like, he has some great run blocking reps. He has his moments in pass pro, ugly losses that need to be fixed, but maybe you can fix him. He's been a backup pretty extensively. Was really stuck at right guard, had some time left in the preseason game, which might be something. Another practice squad candidate, but I don't see how he makes the team. Then Tyrese Robinson and Alec Lindstrom and Mekhi Butler. Those are all guys that have had their moments, also haven't had their moments, which is kind of why they're going to end up where they are. I'm not sure if they necessarily – Alec Lindstrom I could see potentially coming back. He's got the BC ties and everything.
Right.
But, like, the Patriots have a lot of unsettled spots on the interior. So, honestly, if any of these guys want to come back and you want to keep working with them, I don't necessarily see why not, unless you can upgrade. And last thing, Layden Robinson –
another mystery. Biggest
bummer of my summer. I really root for him.
More or less than Brock Lampy.
Oh, stop. It's different. But I just hope that Layden would be in their plans and he would adapt to this new system. But he's been a backup thoroughly, and it doesn't look like that's going to change. So I have him last on my list because I think he has maybe the furthest chances of making the team, or even really the practice squad. Because if you're keeping a guy as a backup who started games last year, you don't want to work with that. That's a red flag to me, and it feels like maybe he's just better off going somewhere else, and that maybe suits him better, where he may have some familiarity, all that good stuff.
An unfortunate revelation for that draft class last year, where it continues to look like it's really only Drake May that ended up, and I guess Javon Baker. We'll see what happens there. But the only difference I had, this is our first difference going through so far, is I do have Cole Strange on the roster. I do think they keep 6 interior offensive linemen, but that is with the caveat that, okay, Bradbury's not really a lock. Ben Brown kind of seems like it, but they're doing so much rotation at that left guard center spot that I feel like they want to keep as many potential guys as possible there to continue to work that over these, the first 4 or 5 weeks of the summer. So I do have Strange on, but that's him, Bradbury, and Ben Brown are kind of all in that same vein where we don't really know what's exactly going to happen. The only lock at that position I'd say is Jared Wilson. And then I did keep Caden as well. I think he's had a good bounce back once they moved him kind of more strictly to the interior. And then obviously Mike Onwenu and stays there as well. So that is
Cole. I hope I'm wrong about Cole. I'd love to see him stay on the team. I thought he actually played well against Minnesota. I thought he had a really good game.
Offseason award winner too. Maybe he's on, in their good graces. So we'll see what happens. But I did have him there. We'll see how it goes and see what happens tomorrow and then into next week. But let's get to the defense. Interior, well, these ones, we'll talk edge defender will be interesting with Jennings, and then obviously safety with Kyle Duggar. We hit that a little bit, but I feel like most of these are a little bit more straightforward, especially the first one we're going to talk about, the interior defensive line. Who do you have on? Who do you have off the roster on the inside for the Pats?
Yep, interior, obviously Christian Barmore, Milton Williams, Kyrus Tonga, man, really great summer from him. I know he told me that being in this defensive line room and his coaching staff has helped his pass rush improve. But then his coaches turned right back around and said, no, Kyrus is putting in the work. Like, he deserves the credit. So good job by everybody all around, because I think everybody thought he was just going to be the big nose tackle who eats space. And he's good at that. And he does have some upfield ability, but you didn't see as much of that with the Cardinals. And I think that he's flashed that. He's really good just picking guys and creating disruption to free up players. I can't wait to see how he continues to grow and evolve in this defense. Wonder if he kind of carves out a long-term role for him, actually. Jeremiah Farms, a guy who's got some positional versatility. I think being able to attack is great for his skill set. He's a really good penetrator, great using his hands. I like him in that role more than I do asking him to just hold his ground the way he has in past years. Joshua Farmer's a lock, obviously one of their mid-round picks. Still coming along, but you can definitely see the flashes. He's stout against the run. He's got some ability to get upfield and beat blockers. And then in terms of out, I've got Kyle Peko cut, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's another practice squad kind of guy where he's got an extended history with Mike Vrabel and this coaching staff. He's also spent time with Josh McDaniels. Mm-hmm. And I also wonder, because he's coming off back-to-back season-ending injuries, I kind of wondered if they were just waiting to hear from him and how he felt in his rehabilitation process and then signed him. Again, because of that, I could see maybe they cut him and they're like, hey, don't go anywhere. We're going to sign you to the practice squad. We're going to keep you around, get him some elevations. Maybe if something happens, you sign him to the active roster or whatever. But he seems like a guy that they'd want to keep around. He does a lot of different things as well, which is cool. Like, he can be used on line games. He's got good hands to win one-on-one. Not as explosive as he used to be. And I thought he got kind of bullied in the run game. That was pretty disappointing, I will say. But if you're asking him to kind of be in attack mode, he has some really interesting plays. Then Jahvaree Ritzie, David Olajiga, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and Philip Blindy, who they just signed. Those are guys that are out. I don't really think I need to explain those too thoroughly. Although Ritzie, he's got an interesting athletic profile. Kind of reminds me of Milton Williams, just in terms of being like a defensive end body type who can play inside. Maybe a practice squad candidate in him.
Yeah, I got no gripes there, and was going to mention Pecco too, only because of the familiarity with both guys. They clearly like him. I was looking for a Mike Vrabel gif on Twitter late yesterday, and there was a clip of him and Pecco on the sideline, like doing something.
Oh, that's him? Oh,
yeah.
Okay, fun. I had no idea who that was. That's fun.
Yeah, so there might be an inside track for him, but no, I'm with you. It's those five, and then the other four obviously on the outside. Maybe Pecco sticks around. But let's get to edge. A deep room for the Patriots. I would say one of their strengths, at least short term. Could still use a long term guy there, which we've talked about with. Call it a Micah Parsons trade, call it using a first rounder on a guy in this room next year. But for now, it's deep for this season. And Anthony Jennings is obviously the oddball here. It looks like he's probably on the outside, but could be a trade candidate who does have, according to Andrew Callahan and Jeff Howe, some potential suitors out there. So Taylor, who do you have in the edge room and who do you have out of the edge room?
Well, obviously, Anthony Jennings is not going to be on the team. I think we can probably safely assume that. So the only other guy I cut is Truman Jones, who another guy I think could be – we got to keep track of how many guys I put on the practice squad that are veterans because I feel like it's a lot. But truly, Truman Jones and a lot of these guys, as I've said, are also going to pursue opportunities elsewhere where they can actually be backups and get on an active roster. But Truman Jones, I will say, he surprised me. I didn't expect a whole lot. Like, he's been on the team since last year. When I looked at his tape on the Chiefs, I was like, okay, I like his effort, but nothing really popped for me. Was good in one-on-ones. I feel like I didn't watch him a ton because he was usually going up against backup tackles. When I did see him, he looked good, but I also was like, okay, like, you either need to be very consistent or, I need to see you against some starters. He didn't really get opportunities against starters because he was consistently with that second group across from Anthony Jennings. But in the preseason, he did well. He contributed on special teams. He contributed as a run defender, contributes as a pass rusher. He's athletic enough to drop into coverage. I like Truman Jones, and I can understand more why, the Harvard kid has some love in the area besides just being local. But this is a stacked room. This might be the deepest position they have on the entire team. It's not against Truman Jones. I think last year he makes this team easily, and it's probably one of their more impactful players, which I don't necessarily think that's what he is. I think he's a practice squad player who can still contribute. But talking about the room, Harold Landry, people are so obsessed with that pass rush win rate last year.
Yeah.
Watch the tape and look at how often he was actually trying to beat the tackle versus trying to condense the pocket. Like, bull rushes do not get love in PFF's database. Like, you can beat the offensive tackle and just create a strict pocket, but you're not technically affecting the passer, so they're not going to give you credit for it. Similar with another player on this. Really, a lot of these guys, they really like power. Mike Smith mentioned yesterday how important that is and how foundational that is to being able to set up other moves. Anyway, Harold Landry has been consistently present as a pass rusher. I don't think people need to worry. No one over here is worried about, is Harold Landry going to be able to get after the passer? He's been doing it quite a bit. Also can be an every down presence, although I think they're going to rotate pretty heavily on the edge. Kayvon Chason, who Mike Smith told us is looking for a home in terms of just like wanting to finally stay in a place. He was with the Raiders, obviously. It didn't work out really well. He's earned a starting spot, and I mean he earned it. He has been given Will Campbell the work, but not just him. He looked good against other teams as well when he was able to practice. He had good work against the Vikings. Obviously, bulldozed the tackle, got the pressure that caused the Alex Austin interception. And also isn't just a pass rusher. I've been saying this about really no one in their room is just a pass rusher who can't stop the run. That's not a thing on this edge group, and that's why I'm so high on it. Like, all of these guys can set an edge, can get upfield and be disruptive. But really, I think K'Lavon Chaisson is someone who can be an every down player for them. Even in my roster, I had them with 3 potential starters at that spot. And now that affects Keon White, who now is the 3rd edge defender. Not alarmed by that at all. Yes, I think we all have hyped this up as a potential breakout season for him. Yep. But both Terrell Williams and Mike Smith noted he's still a developmental player. He's never played full-time edge before. And in this defense, unlike Bills, sometimes you would play on both sides of the line on top of Keon. Like, I think he played a higher rate of snaps at like different positions than any defensive player in the league last year. I'm pretty sure I saw a tweet about it a while ago from somebody I trust. But it's not surprising because he does play everywhere. And just imagine what that does to you mentally and your ability to just learn how to beat an offensive tackle, which is the hardest thing for a defensive player to do. Right. So I'm not alarmed. I think it's still a fundamental thing, but I mean, the coaches love him. Mike Smith was like, he's a violent human being, called him one of the smartest kids he's ever worked with. So don't be alarmed about Keon White. He's still learning, and he's got a guy who's been in the NFL for now, this is 5th season, and K'Lavon Chaisson above him, another veteran that this team loves in Harold Landry. It's okay. Like, if anything, be excited about K'Lavon Chaisson. This is just absurd depth. And then behind them, as if I haven't already almost lost breath talking about the edge room, Braden Swinson, he's been very quiet, but it's because he has such a ridiculous bull rush. Like, you can see every time he puts his hands in a tackle's chest, they consistently kind of go up and need to gather themselves. You don't see that from everybody. And then when he actually does break out the finesse moves, he looks very good. And he's been effective against the run. Like, another very well-rounded player. He's a lock for this roster. I know he was a 5th-round pick. That was only because of off-field whatever. He's been great with the Patriots.
Hasn't been a problem. Yeah.
Exactly. If anything, he's been a very good player for them. And my boy, Elijah Ponder.
I was waiting for this.
When I asked Mike Smith about him, I felt so validated. He called him one of the best free agent pickups he's probably ever seen. Said he's got a really bright future. What else was it? There was another compliment he gave him. But
special teams value? I didn't hear it, but did he say anything about a special teams value? Because that's one of the No, he's played all 4 special teams units throughout the summer, which also just, again, talking about fitting guys on the roster and having those at-large spots. Like, if you can contribute on special teams, it's going to give you a much higher chance in any room. And so, yeah, I think Ponder's been awesome. But sorry, I didn't want to cut you off.
No, not at all. Honestly, it gave me time to see what exactly it was that he said. Oh, he said he got goosebumps talking about Elijah Ponder because he was talking about, I asked the question because when I looked at the tape, he was getting chipped on like half of his pass rushes against the Vikings, and it didn't affect him. Like, he's still trying to beat the tackle. He's not getting chipped and kind of just standing there like you see sometimes. And I think he got a sack or a near sack because he got chipped and just quickly beat the tackle. And he's like, just thinking about that, like, I'm getting goosebumps. He loves Elijah Ponder, like, could not say enough good things. And we said this when they signed him, like, the guy's a freak athlete who profiles very similarly to Khalil Mack. Mike Smith also said he's got a veteran's presence. He picks things up so quickly. I didn't think this at the time. I'm starting to think that Elijah Ponder is going to play over Braden Swinson. And I also wrote an article about it. Like, I've been on this island for a while. I was like, these 2 rookies, man, they are damn good. And because of his special teams value, like, he's making tackles, he's making key blocks on returns. He missed one. Like, actually, it's funny. I think the first 2 plays of both of the games, he made a mistake. The first one, he technically probably did get a hold on Travion Henderson's return touchdown, which Vrabel kind of politely mentioned. Like, we got to be careful about holding on to guys. And then he missed a block in the first game against the Vikings, and that contributed to a tackle. But dude was lights out after that. Like, a genuine core 4 special teams contributor alone, on top of being a freak athlete as a pass rusher. And you see the athleticism on punt when he's just like smoking guys downfield. He's like 250 pounds. So I'm so high on this edge room. I think the Patriots are absolutely loaded. Again, in past years, Truman Jones might be an impact player on this defense because you need him to be. But this year, they can just cycle through guys, and you're going to have talented players who aren't active some weeks, probably in Braden Swinson, just as he kind of acclimates maybe to more special teams. He was a little inconsistent there.
Would you still make a move for a Micah Parsons if you could? Nope. I know we talked about it a little bit yesterday. You're good? You're good with these guys.
Elijah Ponder. We have enough. No, but obviously
Micah Parsons, we're all set with you. We have Elijah Ponder at home.
If it's, I'm not going to say no. I'm not actually being crazy. He's a
I get it. Player, but he's also generational player, ultimate chess piece on defense. Like, if you can get that, you have to make it work. You move up one of these guys, what have you. But yeah, of course. I'm with you on these 5 edge guys too being in the room. I see it the same exact way. Jennings, hopefully you can get something for him on the trade block because, again, as we mentioned, he's a really good player. He just doesn't fit what they want to do, and it's too bad. And then Truman Jones, another offseason award winner, Harvard kid, good story. Same with you. You know, how many practice squad guys can we have? I don't know, but I know the number.
No, like I'm sure that he had like one snap with the starters.
Yeah.
So I that's not, you know, that only means so much, but he really does seem like a priority when they are stacking the practice squad to get him back.
100%. One of the comments here says lack of inside linebacker depth scares me. So Michael McLean, we will talk about that right now. Let's do it. Taylor, linebacker, pretty crowded room. You have 4 guys. Who are they? And is there a potential for a short-term IR candidate in this room for you as well?
I do think so. So I've got Robert Spillane and Christian Ellis, who have been their consistent starters. Jack Gibbons, who's also been great on special teams. He's going to be another core 4 guy for them there. Also, just he's been in this defense for so long. He's kind of in that Spillane role. He's not as instinctive. Like, he's not going to make the plays on the ball or in coverage that Spillane does, but he's very good at reading out runs and just putting himself in position to be effective in coverage as much as he can as a more limited athlete. And I've got Marte Mapu making it now that he was back on the practice field. I know that I've been very critical of Marte, but when I saw the tape against the Commanders, I was like, yes, he's back. Like, it looked like how he looked in college, where he's playing fast, he's physical because he's able to play fast and doesn't feel like it's just his head is spinning. He looks so smooth when he's covering tight ends. It looks like he's bored sometimes because he's such a freak athlete. Like, he could probably hang with some slot receivers if he just got more time to do it. I'm not saying he should, but just tight ends look very easy for him. I think he's going to be key for them to shut down some of the just brutal matchups they've got at tight end on their schedule. They want to go man-to-man. Like, Marte's the guy. He's got great instincts, really good at using his hands also, keeping it on the hip of the tight end so he's not getting in trouble or grabbing at the top of routes. So I think Marte Mapu makes it. Also, just his run defense really looked better to me. As long as he's healthy and they feel good about him, I would be surprised if he was cut based on what he's shown. Jelani Tabai I do have as my first out, but that's a short-term IR thing, I think. They don't really have another guy with his versatility where he can play on the edge. He's a good blitzer. He can play in coverage. I think if the situation around him is better, I think when he's someone that you can pinpoint consistently, that can be a problem. Put him into some more ideal situations. Also, just, you know, if you need the depth, if unfortunately somebody goes down, he brings value on special teams as well. And he's just been out for so long, kind of like Kendrick Bourne. No, Kendrick Bourne has more clear value, but I don't really know who's trading for Jelani Tabai necessarily. So a short-term IR stint, if you had to use it, probably would make the most sense for him. Monty Rice is someone who is familiar with this defense, a guy I think could make the practice squad, a candidate, maybe not Truman Jones's level, but a little bit more depth. I could see it there. Cam Riley had a couple plays, but, you know, I could also see them moving on from him. And RJ Moten, I have not noticed this summer.
Yeah. Again, with you on these 4, I do think Tavai, even more so maybe than Kendrick Bourne, is like the perfect short-term IR candidate because he's been around. They made it a point to, you know, when we talked about it on the show the other day, like, get rid of the Belichick people. Tavai, after what happened last season, would have been the perfect, hey, sorry, it's just not for us. See you later. And they went the opposite, and they leaned into it. He had a good start to got hurt in the spring, which was unfortunate, then got hurt again, in this summer. But he's someone who he's been around. He's out there. He's a presence. He throws his jersey on and hangs out. Like, he clearly wants to be a part of this team. I think that you throw him on IR, you see what happens, you see how healthy he gets, and you work through the first 4 or 5 weeks, what have you, and see what happens. Like, I don't think he's someone who they just cut right away just because he's hurt. I just think
he was starting before he got hurt, or at least he was heavily in the mix where we were kind of surprised. It was like him and Christian Ellis kind of duking it out with Spillane as the consistent guy. So absolutely.
I would consider him more likely to make the team. How do I want to word this? I think it's a short-term IR. I would be more surprised if they outright cut him than he actually made the team. Like, I think he's going to be around after cut-down day. I don't think this is just a simple cut right away. So that short-term IR spot is obviously huge. I have him and Bourne taking them right now. And as we move into it, cornerback, Christian Gonzalez hasn't been out there for a while. He is obviously the lock of all locks on this roster. Who else do you have aside from him in that cornerback room heading into the season?
Yeah, Carlton Davis isn't going anywhere, of course. Marcus Jones, I don't have as a lock.
Ooh, a little hezzy there.
he's competitive and we all know it, but it's just if a guy is 5'10 or taller, it's just really hard for him to compete. And he's always on guys' hips, but he can't affect the catch point consistently enough. And I've mentioned it before. I wonder how tolerant Vrabel would be of that. Now, he's also an all-pro returner.
Right.
He has the gadget stuff on offense. I don't know if they're going to do that. They've got enough guys that they can feed. They got Travion Henderson. Like, they've got their Ferrari. But, I wonder if maybe you can trade him somewhere where he could be maybe more valuable. A team that really needs the corner depth and a guy who you have the Patriots have the depth that they don't necessarily need him to play outside, but you never know. So maybe they can move him, but I do currently have him making the team, just not the lock that maybe he would have been in years past for me. Alex Austin is as close to a lock as I think you can be, man. He has had a very good summer playing inside, outside. The thing inside that impressed me is his willingness to be a run defender. Like, he has embraced that you are an extra linebacker as a slot corner. Like, you need to be willing to do the dirty work. He's done that, has made so many plays. He's very instinctive. I feel like you see the years of experience and the opportunities to start that he's gotten where, like, he and Kayshon Boutte have had some battles. He has locked up Kyle Williams at times, just his awareness of the situation and the sticks, where he's got to get to when he can be aggressive. We saw with the Drake May interception. He's really growing into a good player. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a starter by season's end, but he's going to have a role whenever they want more size in the slot. With Jacoby Myers, I cannot see Marcus Jones covering Jacoby Myers for an entire game, respectfully to Marcus, but he knows what he is. And DJ James, man, he played in the slot for the Seahawks and looked way out of it. It's just not where he should have been. He was kind of a fish out of water, but now that he's back on the outside like he was in college, you see the competitiveness. Does he give up plays every once in a while? Sure, but you were talking about this is the fifth safety on the depth chart, and he's someone who has consistently made plays throughout this summer, has impressed us. Sounds like he's impressed coaches as well, and he'll play special teams. So I have DJ James making the roster as the fifth cornerback. I think that I have Isaiah Bolden not making it, which I always thought he'd have a future at least as a returner. And maybe
me too, Taylor.
It's been so odd, but you never really notice him. And when you do, a lot of the time he's losing to like quicker receivers, unfortunately. Miles Battle, I could see coming back on the practice squad because, one, the size that he brings. Also, a guy who contributes on special teams in his own right has made some plays in this preseason. Jordan Polk. He may be the biggest riser in terms of people I literally did not think not that I didn't need to look into him, but like I didn't know a whole lot. I knew he's from Texas and had played at safety, was probably better in the slot or whatever. But I mean, he's capitalized on his opportunities. Now, the interception was the definition of opportunistic. He got beat, ball pops up, but he gets it and makes a good return out of it. But he also gets a sack. He makes plays on special teams. He's like Alex Austin, very physical in the slot as a run defender. I don't know what his future holds necessarily, or if he did quite enough to make the Patriots roster, but he put himself on NFL teams' radars, and I'm very happy for him. He has definitely made some plays. Kobe Minor, I think if they want to keep him, he's on the practice squad. Love the energy he plays with, but he's gotten picked on at times, not quite as competitive at the catch point, or generally, in coverage as I would have liked him to be as someone to maybe be a dark horse. And Brandon Crossley, I noticed a few times, but honestly, I don't have a whole lot to report on Crossley. I know he's coming late in games, so that kind of is the writing on the wall there.
Jordan Polk, sort of an unsolicited mention from Will Campbell the other day, talking about their rookie class. I thought that was pretty cool. He was asked about what they've done and how they've come in, and he's talking about himself and Travion Henderson, who the first and second round picks, clearly like the cream of the crop, if you will, for this rookie class. He's like, yeah, Jordan Polk's having himself a summer too. I was like, that's when you know that, you mentioned it, not really paying a ton of attention, but to this guy, and he comes on strong and he's made the most of his plays. So good for him.
Such a competitive roster, man. Like the end of preseason games haven't been a complete bore where you like want to check out. It's like, no, like guys are still kind of balling out.
And that's kind of why like it didn't make sense to do a full preview of tomorrow's game, obviously, but there's going to be guys who have a chance to win or lose a roster spot tomorrow and kind of, make their last final push. So that'll certainly be exciting. Jordan Polk's one of those guys. Isaiah Bolden, I'm with you. I have him out as well. That was the hardest one for me because I do just like his potential. He's a taller slot defender who should have been given, I think, more of an opportunity as a kick returner. I'll say it. I've said it since they took him. Like,
so weird.
It is kind of weird.
Every summer, every practice, it's just like, where is Isaiah Bolden during these drills?
It's odd. And even when they did put him out there, they would he would kind of wave off and he would be the lead blocker for the returner. It's like, I wish he got a chance, but I guess they just didn't see it. So who knows? Maybe he returns on a practice squad or what have you as well. It's been, but he's someone who I could see too. Like, all right, I've had my chance here. I can't necessarily knock it. So maybe I'll try and sign elsewhere. But I'm with you on those 5 corners. And now another interesting room. We got 2 more. We got safety, special teams. I'm sure special teams will be pretty easy, but let's do safety here. 5 guys on for you, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay. Who are they? Because I only have 4.
Yeah. So the only guy I have them cutting is Kyle Duggar.
Okay.
I think this is one of their, we've said this for a while. This is another room where they are just very deep in terms of like guys who played NFL games. Even Del Pettis has played NFL games and he's had good snaps. The biggest thing for Del, I think, I can't believe I started off the safety room conversation with Del Pettis. That's kind of,
yep.
But just,
it
I'll
wouldn't be a Taylor Kyle's podcast if it didn't start that way.
Let me go to the beginning. I'll start with some of the starters and then I'll work my way to Del Pettis.
There we go.
I think I was just being defensive of him, but
I like it. I like it.
Jabril Peppers is obvious, but one thing about Jabril Peppers is you need to consider his health, right?
Mm-hmm.
When is he going to be 30 years old? It's either he just turned 29 or he's turning 30 or something like that.
Jabril Peppers turns 30 in October.
Yeah. That's significant. A lot of the time for safeties, like obviously you can lose a step, but for a lot of those guys, it's also just like injuries. You get banged up and you can't play anymore. I'm not saying that's Jabril. I think he's played well this summer, but his availability has been a bit back and forth as it was last season, obviously, because he had the knee injury and that was away from football, couldn't rehab it the same way, But still, Jabril Peppers is a good player, but you have to consider that he may not be available for all 17 games. Jalen Hawkins, I think, is the starting safety, which sounds kind of odd to me based on what I thought kind of coming in. Even though they did re-sign him, they clearly saw some value. But credit to him, man. He's been available. He's 100%. Been a great communicator on the back end. He's made the most of his chances. He's shown range and coverage. Is he going to be a consistent playmaker for you like Duggar was at his best, like Jabril Peppers is? I don't think so, but he's versatile. He's not going to make glaring mistakes on any kind of regular basis. And I think the more familiar he gets with this system, maybe the more we see from him. But I just think Jalen Hawkins is an absolute solid player, upgradable starter, but a nice guy to have given everything that's going on at safety with Peppers' health and his lack of availability in the spring. And then obviously what's going on with Kyle Duggar. Craig Woodson, my defensive rookie of the year candidate, looking like I'm on track. He did everything for him this preseason. He's playing in deep halves and quarters. He's playing center field. He's dropping into the box, covering tight ends. Haven't seen a lot of real slot work for him. It's more like him playing in the box or just being in man coverage against those tight ends. But he can do a bit of everything in that secondary. Love how he plays as a run defender. Another guy who just seems very smart, doesn't look like he's overwhelmed, understands the route concepts, and just doesn't look like he's rattled for a young guy, which is one of the most important things at safety. And then the last guy I have making it is, not the last guy, I'm sorry. Also have Marcus Epps making it. He was one of the last guys I had, and I think he was the last person I put on the team after I made some adjustments, but it was because of the Jabril Peppers situation, because this is a defense that wants to play with 3 safeties. If Jabril Peppers doesn't play, that kind of limits you to those 3 guys. And then you also want some kind of backup just in case something happens in game. So safety depth is going to be very important on this defense. And I think Marcus Epps, he had a nice coverage ID where I think he helped take away a bootleg from the Vikings along with Truman Jones, who was helping up front. Just a smart guy. Josh McDaniels knows him from their time with the Raiders. He used to be a captain, has contributed on special teams. So I do think that he is going to have some role as a depth safety. Like I think he's going to be a special teamer, but also an older guy. If they cut him, I wouldn't be surprised. I just do think that depth at that position matters. And then Del Pettis, because I always go back to Mike Vrabel saying we always want to get younger and cheaper. Doesn't get much younger and cheaper than Del Pettis in the safety room. And he's a guy who's worn a lot of different hats. He's one of their better man coverage safeties, I think. I remember that game he had against George Kittle. He was all over him for the most part. And his only glaring mistakes are things that happen from a lack of exposure. It's usually he kind of has a brain fart, he doesn't ID something. And the coaches have said, like, he's done what they asked and he's kind of been on top of things mentally. So another guy, he's going to be a special teamer who ideally doesn't play on defense unless maybe you do like him in man coverage situations. But I still think that the depth at safety is going to be huge because they want to have that physical presence in the slot. And sometimes, if there's no Jabril Peppers, maybe they decide they want that to be Craig Woodson in the slot and keep Marcus Epps deep where he's kind of familiar. Also, Epps and Craig Woodson spent a lot of time together at the end of the game. And the coaches keep mentioning that they're trying to work Woodson with different rotations. So it's still, he's a bottom roster player. I don't want to overhype it, but I do think it is significant.
Yeah, the only difference I have is I only kept 4, and I have Del Pettis off the roster, unfortunately. I do like his value, obviously, across special teams, but just looking at like where it was kind of one of those final bubble things where I went between Epps and Pettis because I didn't have the room to keep 5 safeties. And with Epps's kind of comes out of the mouth funny. Epps's. Anyway, Marcus Epps's familiarity with the coaching staff, the fact that he is more of a defensive player than just a special teamer, keeping other special teamers around, call it your Brendan Schooler, who we'll get to, Elijah Ponder and Javon Baker. There's only so many spots where it's more versatile than just your core offensive defense. So I went with Pettis off, but again, he's one of the final ones, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if he made the team.
I'll also ask you this. Who's a bigger hitter on this defense than Del Pettis? Not a lot of guys.
No,
and
there's not.
That matters. Like the way that they want to play football, when you watch Del Pettis, I'm like, that's it. He's communicative. He's energetic. He's very, very physical. Like I understand why it doesn't make sense to some, but I can't take him off. I would rather cut Marcus Epps than Del Pettis.
Interesting. He's like
we're clipping this.
Say that again.
When he makes the team, we're clipping this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. Yeah, we'll do it. We'll where are we at? An hour 10. We'll write it down. We'll have Bailey make sure he clips this so I look like a fool. But I do think it's sort of the final. This is my my final bubble play. It's the last safety spot. Don't know if I wanted to keep 5. I couldn't get Pettis on there. But again, I see the value in him. He made it last year. He played well last year, so it's kind of hard to do it, but. It's just obviously a numbers game, which brings us to the final 4 players on special teams. Taylor, I think it's pretty obvious, but I'll give you the floor. Who do you have making it as a special teamer for the Patriots?
Yeah, so I have Schooler as a special teamer. I don't really count him as a safety because he doesn't really play safety very much, except for under the Mayo administration. Then Bryce Behringer, there hasn't even been any competition. His spot is locked in. And then I have Julian Ashby, the long snapper, who has had some funky snaps this preseason. He's a rookie. It's unfair to – I know long snapper is a position where there's like 0 room for tolerance when you mess up a play.
Yeah.
There's also been some execution things. I don't know who's in charge of that necessarily, but like the kick that Borregales missed, I was wondering why he waited until there was like a second left to get that one off. Ashby could be a little bit more consistent, I think, in his snaps potentially. But you do see his athleticism on returns, like especially on punts. He's a weapon down there, and he gets downfield very quickly. So excited to see what he can do there. And then the kicker competition, Parker Romo deserves a spot on someone's team as a starter. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to use him as a trade chip. I think that's the smartest situation is maybe there's somewhere he wants to go. Get yourself like a 6th round pick or something just so you come away with a potential dart down the road. But both kickers have been good. I've said that Andy Borregales needed to play himself maybe not even off the roster. I think if he was just really bad, he would fake an injury and end up with the Foxborough flu. But he's
up on the hamstring after he shanks one type of thing. Yeah,
exactly. But I think they both had their inconsistencies. They're keeping tally much closer than I am. But I would assume that the competition defers to the rookie as long as he's not terrible. Borregales has had his inconsistencies, especially deep. There have been some multiple 50-plus yard misses that I thought he was supposed to excel on. But again, he's still a young player. There's going to be growing pains. But with those special team spots, you really got to nip those in the bud because you don't have as many opportunities as rookie tackles and rookie receivers and all that. But, yeah, this one isn't really that difficult. But credit to Parker Romo for a really impressive summer, and I hope that he gets to go to a situation that he likes.
I agree. I think it's across the board, those 4, and I think it's – I don't want to say fairly obvious because Parker Romo did make it a little bit of a competition and made it a couple weeks ago, I read Phil Perry, and he had Parker Romo making it over Borregales and having them just cut him. So, it was – this was not lately, but I think it was 2-3 weeks ago. I mean, look, he made it a challenge, and I think that's enough credit. It was when you're kind of sticking around as a kicker and there's clearly a rookie who they want to be their long-term guy, you just have to kick until you can't anymore, and he did that over the summer. So good on him, but I do think they ultimately defer to the rookie, and that is the special teams room with Ashby Behringer, Borregales, and Brendan Schooler. And those are our 53-man rosters. Now, Patriots have one more game left. As we mentioned, tomorrow at 8 o'clock, they wrap up the preseason against the Giants. And myself and Taylor will do a post-game show after that. Now, we'll look at whether we want to break down the game, whether we want to break down who made it, we'll do some sort of post-game show here on Patriots Press Pass. So tune into that, and maybe we adjust these roster projections a little bit more. But we figured we'd do it today because most of, if not all of the roster positions on this roster are pretty much locked up. So any more thoughts before we get out of here, Taylor? I know that there's some potential trades that we hit on throughout the show that could potentially come down the pipe, but anything else you're sort of watching for before we get out of here heading into tomorrow's game?
I will say we got an update on Javon Baker. According to our buddy Mike Reese of ESPN, he's told that Javon Baker, who hasn't participated in the last 2 practices, plans to travel for the preseason finale, which naturally gives him a chance to play. So maybe roster spot isn't as, I didn't say it was locked up, but like I still do think as a special teamer, he would almost have to play himself off at this point. But, maybe they just want to see a little bit more from him. And also as a receiver, I don't disagree at all with seeing what he can do, because just leave with a bat. Like, who knows next time he's going to get significant snaps in an NFL game as a wide receiver. Maybe let him finish on a high note. He did technically with the really nice catch along the sideline last week. Yeah. But, maybe 3 targets for 3 catches and, 40 yards and a touchdown, something like that, where he can go in with a little more confidence and some good things on tape as a receiver. But, it's definitely interesting because he was on a list of people that Mike didn't think was going to play after not participating the past 2 days. Just for the sake of mentioning, those other players were Kendrick Bourne, Efton Chisholm, Christian Gonzalez, Anthony Jennings, Terrell Jennings, Jalen Polk, Cam Riley, Jelani Tavai, Jack Westover, and Kyle Williams.
Interesting. It's half of those guys feel like, okay, we're shelving them because they're an absolute roster lock. The other half, it's like, we got nothing for you. Same like Jennings, it's like shelve him so he doesn't get hurt and we could still potentially trade you in the next few days.
Foxborough flu for Cam Riley.
Could be too. Yeah, that is an interesting one. Full season rookie. There's a spot. I think that could make some sense if they did that for the full year. So, we'll see what happens. A lot to be said, a lot to be done on this roster over the next 6 days heading into Tuesday's roster cuts. And we'll have you covered here on Patriots Press Pass for all of it. So again, this is our Patriots 53-man roster projection. We'll see what changes over the next couple of days, and then we'll obviously keep you updated through Tuesday here on Patriots Press Pass and Patriots Daily. So make sure you rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. We got tons of Patriots coverage here. Pat's Beat, Pat's Interference, Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast, all of it, Matt and Pat as well. So make sure you keep it here for all of the best Patriots coverage in Boston sports media. And until next time, we'll be back here tomorrow night for a Patriots postgame show following Patriots Giants. So until then, I'm Mike Kadlick. He's Taylor Kyles. Thank you guys for tuning in. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And we will see you next time. Peace out, everyone.